This is CCS America's new video series on machine vision lighting, where we get technical about machine vision lighting techniques and technology so you can solve challenges more efficiently in-house. I'm Emily Ting, marketing specialist at CCS America and co-host of this series together with Lindsey Sullivan, our technical marketing manager, who is here to share all her knowledge and expertise from her time as an application engineer, not just an application engineer, but our engineering manager. She reached the heights and now she has lowered herself to
This
my
is fun. I want to
level.
move on. No, actually, I would have kept doing that, but I just had children that demanded my time.
They're very cute children,
Thank you.
so
I think so
very
too.
compelling argument. How are
Good,
you doing,
good.
by the
Tommy's been
way?
sleeping through the night for like a week now, and I don't want to jinx it, but I'm like, maybe this is it. And so I feel like a whole new woman. Like, what is 8 hours?
That's great. And hopefully you won't be able to hear the lightning storm that is going on outside right now where I am, but
Just
beware if
lightning
I get
flashes.
distracted. It's probably because of that. Yeah, it's, 5 minutes ago was, fine, and
Yes.
then
We
it
had that
started
like a
pouring
month
right.
ago. It was like lightning flash, but not raining or
I-
thundering. And then at like 3 a.m. that morning, we get like the alert, like blast your phone wakes you up, like thunderstorm or tornado warning, get in the basement. And I was like, how do I get up the kids? Like, no, I always do this. And
It's,
so
it,
we just watched the trees. And if they picked up, we would have gone.
and it's never
Yeah.
that, yeah. Yeah. Yep, that is weather in 2025. But enough
Yeah.
of that. Let's talk lighting. And today's topic is strobing and overdriving, which I think gets used interchangeably sometime, and they're, kind of similar, but also have their, different meanings. So I guess first, Lindsey, do you want to explain, what they mean?
Before I do,
How
I
are
just
they
have to point out
different?
like the irony of like a lightning storm, which is like strobing light outside. We're gonna talk about strobing. Like, come on, like that's pretty cool.
And it's Mother Nature's strobe light is just flashing right in front of me every 10 seconds. It's like really bright too. It's like the
Probably more like
proper,
overdrive, Mother
like
Nature's
blinding
overdrive.
flash. Mother Nature's overdrive.
So yeah, strobing, it's funny because they do get interchanged a little bit, and even like in like marketing purposes, which I'll kind of get to. But long story short, strobing is like when you flash the light in sync with the camera's exposure time. So instead of the light being on continuously, it's only on while the camera is taking a picture. So that's essentially what strobing is. And then overdriving is when during that strobe time, that flash, instead of having the light be at like 100% intensity, we put it at like 200 or 300% intensity by just giving it a higher current, but for a much shorter amount of time. So it's kind of like a rectangle can be a square, but a square can be a rectangle, where overdriving is a form of strobing, but it's not exactly strobing. Like strobing isn't overtime. They're not interchangeable. So when you're overdriving, you are strobing the light, but you're doing it at a higher current to get higher intensity at a much shorter amount of time.
Yeah. Do you want to explain more about what's the purpose of using strobing and or
Yes. So
overdriving?
strobing is, I guess we're kind of getting into the benefit of it because technically, if you're just strobing the light, it's going to be at the same intensity as the light being on continuously. So you could do either one, but when you strobe your light, it actually extends the lifetime of the LED and it helps the LED not get overheated or anything like that. Because the longer that an LED is on, the more heat it's going to generate. And there's heat sink and stuff like that. So, like, the 100% intensity rating is where they've done testing. The LED can be on at this 100% of the time and still be safe. But if you keep your LED off and let it rest, it won't get as hot. So the lifetime can just be a little bit longer. So the way that we, say our lights are eventually time to be replaced is if after so much time that the intensity of the light has dipped like 50%. And so when you have the light on continuously, it's going to take maybe, a couple of years, 5-10 years to get to that 50% drop off. But if you have it on strobing and it's on half the time, then instead of 5-10 years, you're at like 10-20 years. So you can really extend the lifetime of your light when you're strobing it. And it just is a little bit more easier on the light and the system itself. And then overdriving is when you're operating at a really high exposure time, so your line speed is extremely fast. Or if you're really far away and you have to get a lot of light down to your sample and back, you need to make sure that you can send a lot of light to your sample so enough can get back to the camera. So we'll overdrive in times where we have a long light working distance as well. So most of the time, yeah. Most of the time it's high speed, but every once in a while we get long working distance applications.
Yeah. I think in high speed applications in particular, we always talk about freezing motion, and that's usually achieved by overdriving a light. Do you want to expand a little more on, what we mean by that and the
So
physics
when we
behind
talk
it?
about freezing, it's essentially kind of the same thing as pixel blur. So if your exposure time is too slow and your object is moving too fast, by the time the camera starts taking the exposure to when it ends, your sample has moved from here to here. And so there'll be a blur. And it's how many pixels is that blur where, your picture isn't perfectly crisp. It's a little bit blurry and you can tell that the object is moving. If you ever see a picture, if you're into photography, you can slow down your shutter speed on your camera and like turn it and you'll see, the speed and the motion behind you. It's the same idea in machine vision lighting. And when you're just doing a normal strobe at, 100% intensity at best, in order to get the right amount of light, it can hinder how fast your exposure time can be. So if you don't have enough light at the standard intensity and you don't have the ability to decrease your exposure time, that's when you'll get that blur. So when we say you can freeze motion, we're essentially saying we'll give more light so we can shorten the exposure time. So the time that it takes to capture that image, instead of your sample moving from here to here, it's moving from here to here type thing. It gives you the ability to shorten the exposure time so it's not moving in the picture. And that's what we consider freezing, even though it's moving extremely fast.
I think some of these terms might have come up already, but what are the main parameters that we have to, or when we're talking about strobing and overdriving, what are the things
This
you have
comes
to
up
factor in?
when people say, like, I want to overdrive, what controller do I need? And it's not as simple as when you're picking just a standard controller to have, certain communication, like a standard PD4, for example. That one you just pick for the rating of the light and you're good to go. But when you're doing overdriving, you have to know the current of the light that you're going to use, what intensity, how long the light's going to be on, the frequency. So first we'll kind of talk about the pulse width, which is how long the LED is going to be on during each strobe. And then that will kind of lead into the duty cycle, which is the ratio of like the on-off time. So there's the amount of time that this pulse width when the light is on, and then the resting time. And so if you have like a 50% duty cycle, it's on for the same amount of time that it's resting. If you have like a 75% duty cycle, it's on for 75% of the time, like 75 milliseconds, and then off for 25 milliseconds or microseconds, whatever, So the duty cycle is the pulse width plus the rest time. And then the frequency is, how often that strobe repeats itself. So those are kind of the three that we use. How fast is the machine going? What's the frequency, which is, 1 over the period, which the period is essentially the whole duty cycle pulse width combo. But really the duty cycle is kind of the more important one because that tells us how much we can overdrive the light. So if you look at like a lot of the Gardasoft controllers, it'll say like what percentage can you overdrive it, and it'll be based on the duty cycle. So like a 50% duty cycle, you can overdrive it like 300%. But a 75% duty cycle, you can only overdrive it 200%, versus a 25% duty cycle, you could probably get up to like 400 or 500%. So the shorter that you have the light on, the more current you can give to that LED, the brighter it can be. Because really it's all about how hot that LED is getting. So if it's on for longer, it's going to get hotter faster, so you can't give it that much current. But if it's on for a short amount of time, you can give it a lot more current because it's going to be off and resting for longer. So yeah, the duty cycle is probably the biggest one because it tells us how much we can overdrive and what, kind of controller we need to be able to do it in that regard.
Have you ever had, a customer come to you and they just ask for a totally unrealistic or unreasonable demand, whether it's how much the percentage of overdrive or, unrealistic duty cycle or, basically like what's reasonable for people to expect based on like, you know, the existing options out there, like what's the maximum that you can
Yeah,
expect to
I would
achieve?
say for like our standard lights, most of the controllers max out at like 500% is the, most that you can overdrive the light. And some people do want like 500% for much longer than it can do. And at that point, it's like, we just need to get you a brighter light. So then we start stepping up to like the designated strobe lights that aren't necessarily overdriving the standard lights. They're lights that are built to, be much more intense for a shorter amount of time. So pretty much when that happens, you have to be in this ballpark over here with our PF series or, LG series for FULux. But it does happen where people want way more and then you just have to like step up to the next. It's like minor league and major league. Like you're in major league territory.
And like when you have to overdrive it, more than, I don't know, like a less demanding strobing percentage or overdriving percentage, does that have any impact on LED performance and longevity? Like, you know, a less demanding one, it can go for like 10 to 20 years, but like the more high demanding, the overdrive or the, pulse width or whatever, like that shortens the
Yeah, I mean, in
lifespan
the end,
or the
it's all about,
performance.
thermal management. Like if you are running it within the rating, even overdriving it within the rating and the manufacturer's recommendations, it should last a long time. So if I would say it's probably the same of having really high peak current for a super short amount of time is probably the same as having not as high but longer because they're going to get same like temperature and that's going to be what wears out the LED. So the cooler you can keep your LED, the longer it's going to last.
Yeah. I'm gonna maybe jump questions ahead because this connects well. What are the risks and trade-offs when you're overdriving LEDs?
Essentially, if you don't do it right, you could damage the electronic. Like if you just give it too much current and don't have any protections in place, then you could just burn it out and then your light's broken and there's nothing you can do. So really the risk is, yeah, throw
Send
money at your
order
problems. Yeah.
replacement, which more money for us.
And so, yeah, if you don't do it properly and safely, you could definitely just like immediately break your light. And that's mostly caused to just too much, you know, current in one situation. If it gets too hot, over time where you're not doing it safely, but it's not so egregious that it breaks it right away, it might, break it over time a little faster than it would if you were running it in a safe way. And that would probably be more excessive heat building up. Really, what the worst case scenario is you break your light. So it's a solvable problem. It's not like you're going to break your whole machine. You're just going to continue to break your light if you don't do it properly. So ways that we kind of
Right.
can stop doing that is make sure you get a
Sure.
controller that's designed for strobing and overdriving. Like the Gardasoft ones have a safe sense built in. So even if you change a setting that's outside of the manufacturer's recommendation duty cycle intensity, it will just like automatically adjust your settings to not break your light. So if I have it at like a 75% duty cycle and I make my intensity 500%, it'll just change my exposure time to a 25% duty cycle for me because it could have just been an oversight on my part type of thing. So having controllers that are, designed for it, built-in safety features, or really knowing what you're doing and being able to control exactly how much current you're sending the light. I would say most of our customers don't have that, I guess, capability to control the current and like the need or desire to be so precise with it. Most of them want something that's like built-in safety they can't really break, and there's bumpers for them. So some people do want the controllers that let you have a little bit more flexibility. You can do what you want, but most people like the whole, just don't let me break it and we're good to go.
And then what's your take on additional heat sinking? Because I know both the CCS and Gardasoft overdriving controllers, they do what they can to, minimize how much heat they're generating, or how much heat the light generates, but it can still get pretty hot. So do you have any recommendations or advice on how like people who are incorporating that kind of lighting solution into their system can design in extra heat
I would say
management,
most
or
of the
do they need
time
to?
you don't really need to, especially if you're just using it at the rate that it's meant for. You don't have to do anything special. There's heat sink built into the light to plan for it, and that's why they give it that rating, because this is like we designed the heat sink to withhold this much. If you're going to use it, kind of where you want the flexibility and you're doing it a lot and you're really pushing it to its limit, it can only help. It won't hurt. It will never be like, oh no, you cooled it too much with your great heat sinks. Like it's always just going to help extend the lifetime. Yeah. How
You
dare
are
you?
too safe.
You can, fan cool the environment and stuff like that. And some lights come with a cooling built in. If they're going to get extremely bright, the light will have a fan to make sure it stays cool, or like you can water cool it, or you add cold water through it if the light really could get too hot. Otherwise, another thing that is really easy to do that actually would just help is to, when you mount your light, mount it with material that can conduct heat and take the heat away from the light. And that will help a lot to just make sure the light's not getting too hot, because you're not mounting it with something that's going to make it overheat. It's going to take the heat away. So those are your best bets.
Yeah. And so that's like, the lighting side of the machine vision solution. But on the camera side, how does, a strobing or overdriving application affect the exposure settings you use, or like how you have to synchronize,
Yeah, it
the
adds
light
more
and the
complexity than
camera?
just leaving your light on and having the camera flash whenever it wants to. Because now at this point, if if it's not lined up and you have, your camera flashes for this long and then your exposure flashes for this long, but it's off a little bit, you'll get flickering. The intensity of every image will change, because sometimes you have the full pulse width in your exposure time and other times you don't. So you might see your image, the intensity of your image change. And that's mostly when you have those really fast exposure times that you will see that. It'll be more apparent. But yeah, you do have to now make sure that the exposure time and the pulse width are lining up. Typically, we recommend to have the pulse width be like 80% of your exposure time. So you have a little bit of give of, machines talking back and forth to each other, and it's always going to be captured within your exposure time. So that's definitely the more complicated, makes it a little bit harder. And then overdriving makes it even more hard because you have such shorter windows, right? So now our exposure time is this short, our strobe time is this short. Like there's way less flexibility. So getting controllers that are very fast in their operation and how much they can receive a trigger and send the trigger onto the light, that will help a lot. And the dedicated ones like the PF series controller has extremely fast response time for reasons like that. But it adds a little bit more complexity than just having your light on and off, just lining them up properly. But there's lots of ways to do it, and the controllers that we have that factored in. So, the PD4 that does the control, I'm not trying to like plug our products, but like the controllers that are doing lights understand that they're going to be strobed, they need to line up with a camera, and they're built to do that. So having a good controller that's meant for it will make it pretty seamless.
Are there any other, I don't know, software add-ons that come with it when you have to, calibrate, configure both?
No. I mean, like, there's like the Gardasoft maintenance is how you would like, program the Gardasoft controller like on your computer. But that's just associated with the controller. There's no other extra software that you would need to program the light with the camera software. Some of them like will have an ability to let the camera software program the light via the controller. You have a few things that can do that with like a little extra plug-in here or there. But you have to have the right camera and right controller that's already been developed.
We already addressed some of the common applications, but do you want to go a little bit more in depth on when do you typically recommend strobing and
Yeah, so strobing,
overdriving?
I would say a lot of times operators don't like the strobing if it's kind of egregious and like right in their face. And so if there's an operator standing there and they don't want the strobing, it's okay. And you're at 80% or 100% intensity of the light, whatever. It is okay to leave the light on continuously. That's what they're made to do. Or you could use an IR light if it won't affect your image and have that strobe because they can't see that light anyway. If there's no reason to leave the light on continuously, it's not going to bother the operators. The best practice is to strobe the light just for the LED lifetime. You'll just get so much longer use out of it. So when in doubt, if you can, I would strobe. There's easy ways to make sure you have good synchronization with your camera. And then if when you're doing your testing, you're just not getting the right intensity, like you're at 100% intensity, but in order to get a crisp image, you have to have the exposure be a little bit slower than you need it to be for your line speed, then you would step up to overdriving. And that's when you would say, okay, let's just shorten the exposure with a little bit more light. We can get more crisp and we can freeze the image, if you will. So pretty much, if you have to do continuous, that's fine. If you can strobe, I would. If strobing is not intense enough, then you overdrive. If overdriving is not intense enough, then you go to the major leagues and get a dedicated strobe light.
Yeah, and that will strobe so quickly that it looks like it's
Yeah, the
on all the
frequency is
time,
so
or
high
like
to
it's
our
on
eyes, it's continuous, but it's actually just flashing that fast.
Yeah. So it wouldn't bother an operator if they're
No.
standing right next to it. When would you choose to go continuous versus that high-speed strobe? Is it just high-speed applications, or are there any other reasons to justify upgrading to the dedicated strobe lights?
I feel like we took a lot of jumps, like going from continuous to dedicated strobe, or like continuous to overdrive to dedicated.
Like continuous to dedicated strobe, or, since they're both like, they can both look like they're on at all times and they wouldn't bother the operator next to them. Would you want to upgrade to the strobe because it'll look like it's on continuous, but it will also help lengthen the LED's lifetime because it's
Sure.
turning it on
I would
and
say that
off?
the cost of the dedicated strobe system is going to be more than replacing your light every 5 years instead of every 7. So if a continuous intensity light is sufficient, then go with that. It would benefit more to like strobe it, within the manufacturer's warranties if it's the same to the operator, but like it would cost more to have the dedicated strobe. That you'll save money by not doing that.
Need to ask the non-expert
This is why I
questions
love,
because I
so
don't know
kind of
any better.
tangent. Whenever I'm like making content or something, I love sending it to you because I'm like, yeah, super obvious. I don't even have to like include that point. And you'll be like, well, this and this are the same. When do you do the like which one? I'm like, oh my God, you're right. I should make that clear. So I always love getting in your point of view because I don't know what other people don't know, and what's obvious to me isn't obvious to other people. You always tell me what's not obvious. That's great.
I think people who know machine vision in general know more than me. It's just like I only know the bare minimum of
I
machine
mean,
vision.
actually probably more than you think. I think if I sent you into the lab and was like, Emily, solve this application, I bet you would come out with something. I really do. With all the like roundtables you've been to and all the conversations we've had, I think so.
People who listen to this, if you want us to start a new series where it's like the marketer tries to solve the application, let us know and we'll see how it goes. You imagine just like, Red, I can take over your job for a day. You just go relax, go take a day off, or, do marketing's job for a day.
Every application,
totally
we have
got
somebody
this.
else from CCS try and solve it first. Like send out Karen and who is great at, she knows all the part numbers like the back of her hand.
It'll go so well. We'll definitely have
And we're
100%
creating
customer
the customer satisfaction. Exactly.
Exactly. It's in our name. No matter which employee it is, they could be a lighting expert or not, but
Yeah.
they know what to do.
But yeah.
So speaking of, Red and testing, how would you test in-house if you need to use strobing?
That's a great question. For me, I always start with the light at just 100% intensity because it's easier to adjust the right angle, the right working distance, all that jazz when you can just have the light on and you're not trying to take a picture every, move, take a picture, move, take a picture. When it's just on continuously, you can kind of be like, oh, right there, You can just do the testing easier when you have everything on continuously. And then you can kind of see okay, at this working distance in my lab with this light at 100% intensity, I can get this exposure time and still have a good image. Is that fast enough for my application or not? And if it is, congratulations, you're done. But when it's not, that's when I would, mount my light and then plug it into a Gardasoft overdriving controller. And then I would just essentially put the exposure time at what it needs to be for my application. and then upgrade the overdriving when changing the pulse, maintaining my duty cycle for the proper rating of the overdriving and see, okay, I need 400%, and then I can achieve this exposure time that I have set. And then kind of play around with all the samples if they vary in color, make sure that it works on the bright ones and the dark ones. It's always a challenge when it's like, it works on all of these, but I've got this one brown sample that it's just not enough light on. It's always like the worst. So yeah, I always start with the like setting it up, figuring out where everything needs to go in continuous, just standard intensity. And then once you have it there, use the controller to figure out what the right overdriving percentage needs to be.
Have you ever had an application where after you stepped up to the dedicated strobe light, the light that worked when it was on standard, it no longer works because we don't have an exact match in models from standard lights to dedicated strobe light. So did the solution end up changing
Sure.
after you?
So yeah, so to kind of rephrase what you're asking,
up?
like I had it set up, this specifically that I'm thinking of, I had a polarizer on it, and that was kind of the problem, is I had to polarize the light, and even with overdriving, the polarizer wasn't quite bright enough to make my image acceptable. So I did have to go from overdriving it to the dedicated strobe. Definitely, it's not a perfect replacement because even if it's like a bar light, we don't have the exact same size. A lot of them are. Like we have a PF LFXV that's the same size as the standard LFXV, but ring lights are going to be a little bit different in size, the bar lights, stuff like that. And so you kind of have to fine tune it a bit. Versus like before, my bar lights could be here, but because this is a different emitting angle, now they have to be here. So you kind of go back to step one of like finding that perfect sweet spot to get the image that you need. So it's not like a direct replacement, but more often than not, you can find something because you can solve the application with this bar light. And even if it's like, okay, I have to have this specific type of light, we can custom build that. Or like I need this HPR2 200 to be PF version. Even if it doesn't come that way, we could probably make it. Or they can modify the light to make it brighter in our corporate office if we have to. So there's usually always an answer. If the application can be solved, a light can be made to solve it type of thing. Sometimes it might get more complicated if it's not a perfect answer, but it's doable.
Okay. Fair enough. We've talked a lot about, using it for high speed applications, but do you also want to talk about when there's multiple lights and you are strobing them in a sequence, or when we have a light that has multiple segments to it and flashing those on at different times? Because those are both more complicated setups. So if you want to
That's actually a great point, because when you asked what good applications there were for strobing, I completely that's a good application is when you have multiple lights in one situation. You have to turn a light on, turn it off, and then turn on another light, and like that's strobing. So yeah, totally missed that application. Thank you for bringing up this question to cover my bases for me once again.
I mean, to be fair, this is like the list of questions we pre-came up with, and you were like, talk about that.
I would remember to talk about the thing I told you to ask me.
So it's really your credit.
Hey, me.
I'm here as your second brain.
Sometimes I'm your duck in your mind. You're a bird, I'm a bird. But yeah, so challenges of like synchronizing and kind of applications this is if you're doing like different bright field and dark field to solve an application. Like I have to read this code, but I also have to see these scratches. So you'll have like a dome light for the code, and then before it moves on, we turn off the dome light and turn on the low angle light. So you have to make sure that you're lining up the exposure time for each light, synchronizing with that camera. Or sometimes there's multiple cameras where this one and this light and then this one and this light, and they're looking at different parts, but if the light is on for both of them, they're interfering with the other camera. So you have to have this light be on and this camera take a picture and then turn off, and then this light and this camera take a picture. And that can get as complicated as, we've had some applications where it took like 4 different exposures to solve everything they needed, because we were looking like for dust, we were looking for like scratches, we had like spotlights, we had this, because it's just a big machine. So they had to make sure that they had a controller that had enough channels for all the lights. We had to have an 8-channel controller, and then like each one had to have its own, this trigger turned on channel 1, this one channel 2, and then their PLC had to tell everybody what to do. There's a lot of communication between all the parts, which, the more communication you have, the more difficult it can be to make sure everything lines up properly every time. But it's easier when you have controllers that can have everything in one, and then you're not dealing with like 4 different controllers. You're just the one controller setting the triggers to it. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but yeah, probably the challenge is the biggest one is synchronizing everything together.
Lots of times when one light is not the solution that solves everything.
Unbelievably annoying when like you'll have an application and one light solves like 8 of the 10 or 8 of the 9 things, or like 8 of the 9 like actual samples. Like I kind of mentioned, like some will be like yellow, whatever, brown, and then like it's like, this one thing works for all of them except for this stupid one. It doesn't work. Like it's gonna take this whole other solution and set up, and there's nothing you can do. Like it's just a totally different. The way it's reflecting the light is just completely different than the rest of them. So you kind of have to be like, okay, well, for all of them, you need this, but for this one, you need that. And then it's up to them if they want to go forth with this way more complicated system than it needs. And it's just like, God dang it.
Yeah.
It was so easy until this last one.
Yeah. It can get more complex pretty quickly. Yeah. Is something I always notice. Yeah. Is there anything else, like last final thoughts you want to add about strobing and overdriving, or advice to people who might consider using it in a current or future
don't be afraid of it. A lot of people are like intimidated by the idea of, overdriving the light and like, oh, can I break it? Like there's you can get so many bumpers, as many bumpers as you want to not break the light, that there's no reason to shy away from it. And if you can do your own testing and you kind of have line speeds that can vary or tend to be fast, like having a good controller that can do overdriving on hand is going to just be better and save you a lot of time reaching out and borrowing a controller from people and stuff like that. And we do loan out our dedicated strobe series. So if you get to an application where it's just not enough and you're not sure if the PF series or the LG series is bright enough, we'll lend it out to you so you can do testing. So you don't have to, you can try before you buy, especially the really expensive ones. You don't want to buy and have it not be what you need or not be whatever. Yeah. So, yeah. But otherwise, it's a really useful tool. And like, it's crazy how much at this point, LEDs are intense enough that they shouldn't really be the bottleneck of your machine. Before, it was kind of like, well, we can't go faster because then we can't inspect it because the LED is only so bright. And that would kind of be the reason a line speed couldn't speed up. But now they're so intense, it shouldn't really slow you down any, which is good. Good for people now. And productivity. Yeah. Yeah, more throughput, all that good stuff that manufacturers spend all their time. How do we save, half a second on each line? Because that like equates, it adds up. It's crazy. Like, Yeah. Especially the more you're like outputting. Yeah. The more you can improve it, like the 1%, like we improved this machine 1%, like that could equate to like millions of dollars, which is insane. But yeah. Otherwise, no, that's it. That's the kind of quick what you need to know on strobing and overdriving, the difference. Yeah, that's all I got. You gave plenty, so thank you for your time as always. In terms of stuff we've got going on, our like Shea Motion time. I guess by the time we publish this, it'll be September, which is when we are doing a special discount gift with purchase campaign, because it's our anniversary in September. So another thing we offer is you can get a special discount on lab pricing. So you would like get a light, and if you're going to keep it in your facility to like test applications in-house, we give we give that all the time for that, not just for the and so you can for those types of orders. The anniversary is 365 days a year. These 2 months continue. Yeah, for September through October, if you place a lab order with us and it meets a certain threshold, we'll gift you a free product. And, depending on, or if you spend more, you get, the number of options you have to choose from for your free gift.
kind of increase. So was it 500? If you spend 500 or more, you can get a free
It
CDVA
overdrives.
controller. It's one of our newer ones, and it overdrives. That's true. Great tie-in. Did we plan this? Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
We definitely planned it this way, huh? But yeah, like nice, simple controller. It also has a cool function where can connect multiple units through infrared communication. So, you can kind of build like an 8 or 12 channel controller with two or three of the 4-channel units, which is pretty handy when you have more lights that you need to
16
sequence
sequences, just stick it next to each other. I actually have no idea how that infrared communication works. To me, it is witchcraft. And I don't have to know because I'm not doing application stuff anymore, so I don't have to answer those questions. I just have to tell people it exists. So it's not my job to know anymore. But it's witchcraft to me that they just put them next to each other, and it's now this one controls that one. That seems fake. I think okay if you insist. Anyway.
And then if it's $1,000 or more, you could choose either that CDVA controller or an FE Flex 2 300mm in red kit. That's a really great light to have for testing because, with the interchangeable diffuser windows, and also you can change the position of the lens inside. You can have 12 different lights essentially in one unit, and they all give different levels of diffusion and intensity and the focus of the emitting angle. So those are also
has built-in
really
overdriving
handy
if you want.
And then
it overdrives 450% for the first bit that it's on, so you can test that too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, FE Flex 2. Also, something we also definitely planned to include for this episode. I guess that kind of falls away with the next one though, because if you spend $1,500 or more, you can choose between the CDVA controller, the FE Flex 2, or the LFXV 100 in white, which LFXV is our magic light. If all the standard form factors are not solving your application, chances are the LFXV will solve that remaining 10%, 20% of applications. So if you want to have one on hand for testing, that's, a useful one to have. It's always popular, so I feel like it gets loaned out a lot, and that means longer wait times. So if you want your own, by all means, have one in your lab that you can keep. The standard version
can be overdriven.
I guess it can
be. We do have it.
Yeah. That's not its main selling point.
We do have that form factor in the PF series though. So if you do solve it with the LFXV and it's just not enough light, you can just hot swap the PF series in. Ask me how I know, because we had to do it for some demos for Automate. We had to solve it and mount everything with the standard one, and then put and it got delivered right at the end, right down the line, down to the wire.
That's right.
Make sure it works with the PF. Yeah.
Now that I think of it, you're right. That was the one where it arrived just as they were picking up the crates, and I had to quickly rip it out of the box and put it in a different box and ship it into the crate as it was being pulled out the door.
So yeah, that's really easy to swap those two.
Stressful time.
Different controller communication, but yeah. So that's a good deal, and that goes till October, end of October.
Yes. So get your order in. You can email sales@ccsamerica.com if you want help with that, or if you're a current customer, just ask your sales rep and they will help you. But yeah, thank you for listening. If you learned anything new about overdriving and strobing today, please give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. You can follow, CCS America and Lindsey and me on LinkedIn. We usually post other tips, or Lindsey posts other tips about machine vision lighting, so highly recommend following her. feel free to send us, your questions or topic ideas for this series because we'd love to hear it and make this for you, our customers. But yeah, with that, thanks for
Emily.
listening. Thank you.